So, Dennis Locorriere,
Yes.
where and when were you born?
I was born in 1949. They tell me that's the year they invented television. I don't know if that's true. June 13th. So I'm a Gemini. Not that I really believe that stuff, but people tell me all the time that I'm schizophrenic. So I tell them
That's a characteristic of Gemini.
Yeah, you know, when I was I went for an Army physical and they rejected me, and I didn't tell my mom I was going because I was afraid she'd call them and convince them to take me. And when I got home, she said to me, "What did they tell you?" And I said, "They told me I was schizophrenic and they didn't want me." And she said, "Oh my God, what if you really are?" And you know, a lot of moms would have ran to the Bible. She ran to the dictionary and she looked up schizophrenic. And she said, "It means you're a split personality." I said, "Well, then neither one of us will be killed. Relax." You know, so no, it's really true. She went to the dictionary.
Amazing. So we're going straight from your birth to your schizophrenic attack. Where were you born, Dennis?
I was born in Union City, New Jersey, which is like
Union City Blue.
Yeah, it's just on the other side of the Lincoln Tunnel from New York City, you know. And so I grew up in that whole environment. A lot of factories, a lot of bars, you know, stuff like that. Real working class kind of place. Right. And that's all there was to do.
So
was
kind of industrial.
Yeah, so you could either be a drunk or entertain them, or both. You could actually do both some nights, you know. And that's a good training grounds when you play in those bars too, because these guys come in and they want to hear what they want to hear, and if they don't know it, you make it up, pretty basically, you know, so they don't kill you. So that's always a good training ground.
Right. So what if they shout out, "Can you do such and such?"
Oh,
the answer is always yes.
Absolutely, and you hope, you know, at least you start it and then they pass out, you know. That was good training.
I gather you were raised by the women folk in your family.
Yes, I was. My mom and dad never really lived together. They were very young. My mom was 19. My dad was a year younger than her when I was born, and so they were just kids, and they never really lived together. And pretty much when they kind of realized they were too young to do that, she split and went back home with my grandparents. So I lived with my grandmother and my grandfather, but then her three sisters. So
so two generations of women. Yeah,
so it was all women. So my aesthetic, you know, it's really weird. I didn't grow up with like a love of football and drinking beer. My aesthetic was more seeing my mom and her sisters come home from like a Broadway play or a film and have the soundtrack, and I'd see how moody-eyed they were over all these things, you know. So I never had anybody encouraging me to like play sports or any of that. So I'm not really into any of that. My aesthetic was just some other thing. Just totally some other thing.
So obviously, you reckon that would influence your creative direction, I suppose?
I guess. I mean, because my mom was a real fan of singers. You know, she mildly acquainted with Sam Cooke, and she kind of sort of introduced me to him when I was a kid. I've told this story before, but when I was a kid, he used to come on the Ed Sullivan Show, and my mother used to say, "Oh, we know him," her and her girlfriends, because he and his brother were gospel singers, and when he started singing pop music, they were kind of following his career. And she was telling me this stuff, and I just thought it was something she was saying. And we went to Palisades Amusement Park and watched him sing one night, and he blew me away. And after the show, he was signing autographs, and she yelled, "Hey, Sam!" And he looked up and he said, "Hey, Ruth, how have you been?" And that was the whole thing. But I was like, you know, because you never want to find out your mother's cool. You know, she said, "What are you going to blame?" "Oh, my mother's hip. Now what am I can't blame her for everything." You know? No, but it's really true. And so my love of music probably came from my mom, because I saw how much it pleased her. But then as I got older, she tried to discourage. My mom was funny, because she'd buy me a set of drums and a guitar and then sit and tell me how, you know, don't be a musician. They lead terrible lives. They never earn money. And, you know, it was really weird, because she would bring home records and really interest me. But then when I wanted to do it, she got really frightened for me.
I guess that's your parents' job, isn't it? Is to introduce a bit of conflict into your life, so it makes you a richer person.
Yeah, but you know, I'll tell you something. I saw a thing once. I was watching a thing, and they were talking about your both parents, your father and your mother. And they said that the thing about your dad is the person that'll say, "Come on, you can climb that tree. Don't be such a wuss. You can climb." You know, and your mom, though, it's also good to have the person on the ground going, "Be careful, be careful, be careful," because you want both those balances. But being raised by all women, it was all just cautionary. You know, football team, you'll break your leg, you know, paper route, no, you'll be killed somewhere on your bicycle, you know. I mean, I wanted to be an altar boy. Oh, I heard those priests touch those kids. I mean, you know, it was all cautionary, and I really never had anybody going, "Come on, you can," you know. So I'm kind of amazed. I had to kind of find that incentive in myself. because the women were all just telling me,
Well, kept you alive.
and you think it's tough here, wait till you leave. You know what I mean? It's like when they frighten you to death at home.
Was there a moment then when you thought, obviously coming from this musical background, because obviously it was a family that loved music,
Right.
was there a moment when you thought, I'd really like to get involved with this as a career, as something that I want to do?
No, it kind of just, all I wanted to do was play around in the house, and just learn to play and bang on things. I used to play drums down in the basement with records. And I'm sure upstairs, my poor grandfather, an old guy, he couldn't hear the records, just my playing. He was funny though. We used to try to practice downstairs, and he had this broken English, always had this broken English, the way he'd find certain parts of words. Mm-hmm. And he thought that amplifiers, he took the fire part literally because they would glow. So he would thought that amplifier meant amplifier to burn down his house, I think. No, seriously, because it was the fire part, you know what I mean? It was like, but so we would bang around. But I'm so glad I found that because, I hear people now talk about how they played instruments when they were kids, but then they gave it up because they weren't going to make a good living at it. And I think it would be great, no matter what job you had, to be able to go home and plunk on a guitar or play piano. I mean, everything doesn't have to be a career. Certainly, I would not have found another job in my life that I would have stuck to like I did this one. Apparently, I'll do this one with a sucking wound, up, down, all that stuff, But I couldn't imagine having found another career or a vocation that I would have been so steadfast at.
So there wasn't a moment that made you want to become a professional musician as such. But are there moments that stand out in your memory as a boy, sort of seeing things on television or going to a concert and thinking, "Oh, this is really special"?
Yeah, but not
Sam
really.
Cooke obviously must have been one of them.
Sam Cooke's seen him, but I don't necessarily know that he made me feel like I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. But what I think I've done is I've taken how these other things have hit me emotionally, and I don't necessarily want to do a Sam Cooke impersonation, or I'm a big Beatles fan, don't want to sound like the Beatles, but I like to take those things, those feelings that I was given, and maybe convey them in my own way to somebody else. It's like when I was watching an interview with Paul McCartney, and he was talking about the first time he heard Buddy Holly. And he thought, oh, how cool that was, and how it made him feel. And what's great about that is that's how I felt the first time I heard Paul McCartney.
Right.
How he felt the first time he heard, Buddy Holly. So it's just a thing that you pass along. I remember listening to all those real emotional Bee Gees songs that don't even make any sense. Those old ones about a lemon never forgets and all these strange psychedelic words, but the melodies would just tear my heart out and stuff. I'm a sucker for that.
They're great
anyway.
singers.
I'm a sucker for emotional melodies and things like that anyway. I really am.
So when did you first get up and perform to an audience?
Why? Funny now that you say that, the first time I ever remember singing was, there was a TV show on and somebody was being Santa Claus and he was singing Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and I must have been like 4 years old and singing Santa Claus is Coming, and I hit the big note with him at the end, to town. I remember having my arms open, and then my family was in back of me going, and embarrassed the hell out of me, but something must have felt right. Something, you know what I mean? And I guess it's like, you do it for affirmation. I told my friends that if every human being in the world called me on Tuesday and told me how wonderful I was, by Friday I'd be saying no calls. But that's what makes you, I guess that's what makes you move. What, that's it? So it makes you move forward, I suppose. But I don't ever remember a day that I thought I wanted to be a professional. I started sitting in bars with bands when I was old enough to sneak in.
This was still in Union City.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, how I met the guys in Dr. Hook was I wandered into a bar that they were already playing in. There were a bunch of Southern guys. And they asked me if I could play bass. And I pretty much lied and said yes. And I don't know if I borrowed a bass and they borrowed me an amplifier or something like that. And I just started working with them. And what I liked was it was a bar and you had to play a lot of different things. You had to play Creedence Clearwater and the Beatles and Satin Doll and standards and country things. And it was like a real education in what also kind of people, what people want to hear. What the bartender used to do? He'd get other club owners in there, and then he'd say, hey boys, do that one you's recorded. And then we could play anything we want. We'd do Proud Mary or something, and the other bartender would be going, really? For $60 a week, huh? they thought he really had the guys who
The
recorded
recording
that. Yeah, so. But it was great. And my friends, my real slick rock and roll friends, used to come in and say, "Oh, I feel sorry for you having to play all this crap." But I was loving it. I was having to fake my way through every single kind of song there was, radio things, and I really thought that was great. I really liked it. Yeah.
But you'd been in bands prior to that, hadn't you?
No.
You hadn't at all?
No, I had one little band, a bunch of friends of mine. We were called the Prodigal Sons, and we never played a gig. We just rehearsed on weekends. That's all we did. Got together and rehearsed. And I remember the guitar player saying, not wanting to come to rehearsal. And I said, "What do you mean you don't want to come to rehearsal?" And he said, "Well, I want to see my girlfriend." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, what if I don't want to be a musician for the rest of my life?" And I thought, you heathen. So maybe that was it. We're we're zoning in on a moment. Maybe that was when I resented him so much, saying we were like 14.
Right.
And he said, "What if I don't want to be a musician for the rest of my life?" And I thought, well, you're certainly in the wrong room. I guess that's the moment I became elitist. Yeah. But
what was the Prodigal Sons musical thing then?
Oh, the Hollies and anything, the Stones, Painted Black and Mother's Little Helper and Look Through Any Window and I'm Alive and all that stuff, all the 60s stuff. And I was the drummer and we had a singer. I didn't even really sing. I sang some harmony. And my friend McCluskey, who, if you hung out with me long enough, you'd hear me mention him all the time. He's a guy I know since we've been like 5 years old. He one day said to me, he's a bass player, and he said to me, "We're putting a band together, you could be the front man, right?" And I said, "I don't even play." He said, "You know a couple of chords, you got a good personality." He kind of thrust me up front playing, and 3 days later we had some Christmas party, and so I had to fake my way through, a ton of songs, Christmas songs and Ray Charles songs, but that's great. Put your ass on the spot. Like
was that a paying gig?
Huh? Yeah, it was. It was. I don't know how much. That's the cool thing is even as recently as a couple of years ago, me and a few of my friends in Nashville, we had this little R&B band called Lost in Detroit. And all we did was we took all R&B songs and we treated them not like we'd ever heard the records, but as if maybe someone pitched us a song and this is the way we would do it. And so we'd just go out and play it. And we'd play these little bars around Nashville. And at the end of the night, they'd be like, you'd get the door. So maybe there'd be $50. And I'd leave and they'd go, "Your money." And I'd think, "Oh yeah, that's right." I mean, to this day, I'll actually leave without getting paid if I had a good time. I'll think, "Oh yeah, okay. I'm such a moron." Thank God somebody collects the money because I just leave.
You're not Chuck Berry.
No, I know. He doesn't play and gets the money. We did a gig like that, where he rode around town until 5 minutes before he was supposed to go on, and they'd already struck his set and put up the next band, and he pulled up, and they said, "Sorry, Chuck." And he said, No, Chuck Berry goes on at 9 o'clock. It's 5 minutes to 9. Chuck Berry's here. They had to pay him for not playing,
Excellent.
I've never gotten paid for that. Well, maybe I have I've made people happy by not playing, but I don't think I've ever gotten paid.
I think Dr. Hook at that point was called Chocolate Papers.
No. Chocolate Papers was a band that Ray, Billy, and George were in down south. I never had anything to do with that band.
Right.
What happened was George came up north. He sent for Ray, and I joined the band. We were we're talking about in a little bar called the Bandbox, not a career move here. As a matter of fact, there was already a sign in the window. George had made up the name Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, and there was already a sign in the window, and I think it said Moe's on bass. I mean, he had made up people to put the sign in, and I kind of fit in, and then they sent for Billy, and so but they were a group.
So did you have to become Moe then?
No, yeah.
You're allowed to get your own name.
I was allowed to be called Dennis, yeah. Although I don't know why I am called Dennis because I'm Italian. No, I don't know what Dennis Locorriere means. I don't understand how I have the first name Dennis with an Italian last name.
I've always been intrigued by the name Locorriere. I mean, does that have a meaning?
It means the courier.
The courier?
The messenger, the mailman, the courier. The only place I ever see it is the Italian newspaper. The Corriere della Sera, the Daily Messenger or the Daily Courier. And you know what scares people is if it was a French name, it would be L-A or L-E, and then they would capitalize the C. The noun would be capitalized, and people would be more willing to phonetic the thing out. But when they see my name, the C is small, and they just go. We checked into a hotel on the road a couple of years ago, and the woman actually went, "Mr. blah, 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 blah." I'm not kidding. Looked at me, handed me my key. Mr. blah, 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 blah. Been on the radio with Ray Sawyer, and they say, "Okay, how do you say your surname?" We say Locorriere, and the DJ said, "Oh, I won't be able to say that." I thought, you're in communications.
Can I call you Ringo?
Yeah, you call me Ringo. You know, yeah, and it used to be like, and here we have them today, Ray Sawyer and Dennis from Dr. Hook, like I was the dummy or something, you know. And sitting on his knees, little wooden Dennis, you know.
And I guess in the Spanish-speaking parts of the world, the fact that you've got the word loco in the beginning of your name must appeal to them too.
That's true. You know, when I was a kid, I thought I should shorten it to something, and what am I going to shorten it to? Me and my friend McCluskey again. Before we even knew how to play instruments, we were going to call ourselves Lock and Key. Locorriere and McCluskey.
You're glad you didn't.
Well, we are glad, both of us. We talk about that all the time, actually. I talked to him 3 or 4. Yeah, no, it always comes up.
This isn't relevant to the thing, but my daughter plays with a friend of hers. And they sing. She's called Black. Her friend is called Lucy Ducker. Yeah. So the plan, of course, is to call them Black and Ducker.
Black and Ducker. See, that's perfect. Hey, you know, I'll tell you what, no, you leave that in there, because I'll tell you what, there is nothing more horrible than having to come up with a band name nowadays. If I had to come up with a band name, I was thinking about calling it Dennis Locorriere and His Reservations, because I have them about everything. You know, he's back in the business and he has reservations about this. You know, I stayed out of this business for so long because I didn't want to get in and play that kind of game. And as you watch it changing, I thought, oh my God, I really don't know these rules at all. But now I'm kind of in, and there really are no rules. I mean, I'm not really trying to. I don't look at the charts to see what I should write. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do that at gunpoint. Yeah.
You don't have to.
Well, anybody who looks at the world and says it hasn't changed has either one, been in a coma, or is in total denial, because it's changed a lot. You know, it's changed a lot. I mean, since the events of last year and stuff, the world is, you know, it's just a strange place to be. And, you know, how strange am I for trying to entertain it? You know.
Let me get you back to Dr. Hook.
Go ahead.
Briefly.
Yeah. No, please. It's all back to Dr. Hook. Believe me, without Dr. Hook, I'd just be a guy in another band.
Not so.
If it wasn't for Dr. Hook, I'd just be some guy that used to be in Chicago or Status Quo or Alice Cooper. I could have been Alice Cooper.
The first major break that the band had was getting a couple of songs into a Dustin Hoffman film. Now, how did that come about?
It came about. We made a tape for some guys that came into a bar. There was some guy in New Jersey that his family had made a lot of money in textiles, and he had a factory, but he wanted to be in the music business. So he discovered us, so to speak, and put us on tape and didn't know what to do with us. And this tape kind of got into the hands of a guy that became our producer for years and years. And he was at that point musical director on a film, because who is Harry Kellerman? Why is he saying those terrible things about me? And Shel Silverstein had written the score. Now, the cool thing about that for me is that I was a big Shel fan. And his songs used to blow me away. I had an album called Inside Folk Songs and all these things. And one day I saw him on a street corner in New York, just standing, waiting for somebody, I guess. And I could not approach him because, you know, he had that shaved head and that beard. He looked very gruff. Actually, he was a sweetheart. But I stood there probably for about 20 minutes and never could bring myself to say anything to him. And about 6-7 months later, they brought this tape into a studio and they said, we want you to learn these songs. Don't pay any attention to the guy's voice. He's not a very good singer. And they put the tape on and it was Shel. And I would have signed a deal with the devil at that point. No, I really would have. I mean, I was one of those, at that point, I would have signed a deal with anything I had to do just to be able to get close and work with Shel. To sing one of his songs, yeah. Yeah. And it was a good thing, too, because, Shel and I kind of touched each other's lives creatively right up until the time he died. It was a big influence on me, Showed me things not to do, what to do, just to really... He never really gave you lessons, but he was very generous in telling you things that he learned, which is cool, But no, so that blew me away. And then we learned these 2 songs, and we were actually in the film at a thing filmed at the Fillmore East, which was another cool thing for me because, up until a few months before that, I'd been to the Fillmore East dozens of times to see Traffic and Cream and all these bands. And now we were in there filming a little spot where we were Shel's backup band. Called Captain Love, but they had the amoeba in back of us and then things pulsing. And you know what they did? They filmed it on a night that was an evening with Grateful Dead. So what they did was they piled all these really stoned, Grateful Dead fans in here. I would imagine all on LSD or something, and then all primed to see the Grateful Dead. And then they turned on all the house lights and said, "But first, and they dragged our asses out there to do the same song 20 times and lip sync. Besides, we were miming it while they filmed, and these, you could just see these like, it's like, oh shit, this ass will be straight by the time these morons go off, But it was a great experience, and Dustin
How
came
did the
on.
audience take you?
Oh, they were great, I guess. I mean, they never show the audience particularly, But Dustin comes out of the audience because Shel calls him up, and he's supposed to be a producer and songwriter. And what was really nice about that whole experience for us is they took about a year to make that movie, and Dustin, because he was playing a musician and someone in the music business, he wanted us around all the time for some kind of input, because he wasn't a musician. And we would be hanging around with Shel just playing, like on the set somewhere. And Dustin would one day he walked by and he said, he stopped and he just said to Ray, "What do you think of opera?" And Ray went, "Oh, it's okay." And if you see the film, Barbara Harris asked Dustin, "What do you think of opera?" And he goes, "It's okay." Because he didn't know what a rock and roll musician would say if he asked. So he would draw from us. And then he did the David Frost show in America, and he forced us on the show with him, because he didn't want to do the whole 90 minutes. He said, "I can't talk for 90 minutes. Give me a break and do 2 songs." So that was a great experience for us that whole year. Except, we'd hang around with all these people, movie people all day. And then at night, we'd go back and play that seedy little bar in New Jersey. And we'd say to the drunks, well, here's a song we had the pleasure of recording for a Dustin Hoffman movie. And they'd go, "Yeah, right." Because, and then when the movie finally came out, they were all so stunned, But so great experience. Again, because of Shel. Just being around Shel, and he would bring us places and introduce us. Brought us to the Playboy Mansion out in L.A., where they have flamingo walking around and llama, and they have bowls of fruit, and they say, "Take one." But as soon as you take one, that Hefner's going to come down and go, "Where's that rare Peruvian apple?" You don't want to touch anything. Believe me, we didn't feel good at the Playboy Mansion. No, you don't feel like, we were a bunch of ragtag people. Yeah.
Was this before you'd had some success, or was
right
this
around?
after?
This was all the beginning. After the film, we did. We got a record deal with CBS Records. We had recorded an album's worth of material in New York City, and then Shel had been telling us to come out to California, to San Francisco, because he lived out there on a houseboat in Sausalito, and he just wanted us to be out there. And when we moved out there, he sang Sylvia's Mother to us one night. And I thought it was great, because I like those Shel songs that were stories. I like the ones that you could get, really perform. And so we went in, and our producer asked Clive Davis if we could continue recording, even though the album was done. And we recorded Sylvia's Mother, and he liked it a lot. And he got behind that single. And, the first week it came on the charts at like number 99 and then disappeared. And we all kind of, we were going to celebrate at that. All right, how was that? And he worked that single for 9-10 months. I mean, the good thing about Clive Davis is that when he committed, he really did commit. And then our second single was Cover a Rolling Stone, which was nothing like Sylvia's Mother. Because believe me, we got now pitched songs about your uncle, songs about your aunt, songs about every family member, once you have a song with a mother in it. But our second single was Cover a Rolling Stone, which was so radical. It was such a change from Sylvia's Mother. But yet Clive Davis worked that song and stayed on it until it got to be like number 2 in the States.
Was that, I've always wondered if that song was written with the intention of getting you on the cover of Rolling
Shel
Stone. I mean, that was quite a
Shel
conscious...
called us in a hotel room and said, "How'd you like to get on the cover of Rolling Stone? Take this song down." And Ray, I think, wrote it down in an address book, and we learned it that night and sang it on stage with one guitar that night. And people just loved it because, we were poking holes in all that stuff. Carlos Santana heard that song and thought it was written about him. Because there was a daddy driving his limousine, and because I guess maybe he was leading that excess, that life at that point. But he really believed it was like, oh, cool, thought it was biographical.
Mr. Modesty.
Yeah. He also, when he heard Sylvia's Mother, he said, "Oh man, it sounds like the whole band is crying." Which I thought was nice.
Cover of Rolling Stone was a huge hit for you in America.
Yeah.
And it flopped here, because it kind of backfired on you here, didn't it?
Yeah, they wouldn't play it because of the trademark name. Sort of like Lola, where Ray Davis had to change it from Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola. But they wouldn't play it. But I think CBS Records at the time had some kind of hotline where you could call clandestinely and hear it over the phone. And then those radio DJs put out the cover of the Radio Times that got played, and people thought we recorded that. And basically,
I thought you recorded.
No, basically they took our record, and when the chorus came up, they had a bunch of DJs in the studio say, "Cover of the Radio Times," and Oh, but if you listen, we're still in there. You know, but
So
they played
they
that
just
for a
sang it
while.
over the top of your track.
Yes.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, but that, you know, so that was, I guess what was good about that record was that people realized at that point that you could just about expect anything from us, which was nice. And it also, you know, at that time, man, it was glam rock. I mean, we were on the road with like Alice Cooper and Kiss, and everybody was 8 foot tall and hair and beauty marks and spandex, and we were just a bunch of hippies. So what our little thing was like cover Rolling Stone, was to poke fun at. As the support act, we would be poking fun pretty basically as who they came to see. Yeah. And we got away with it, you know, but it was cool. Again, down the Shell, really, you know.
Great songwriter, songwriter.
Oh, yeah.
But I've always felt that you've kind of suffered from a bit of misunderstanding there, that everybody always thinks that Shel wrote all the songs and all the hits for Dr. Hook.
Right.
Which is not quite true, is it?
No. Oh, Shel was writing for years. I mean, Shel wrote Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash and The Unicorn for the Irish Rovers. And no, there's a good bunch of those songs that had been recorded a couple of times. We just happened to get them more attention.
What I mean was, you wrote some of the songs.
Well, some of them, but I'll tell you what, again, I hate, you know, well, I don't hate to keep going back to Shel, but later on, after about 2 or 3 albums worth, Shel actually got a little self-conscious and said, you know, people are going to start thinking that you're nothing but a mouthpiece for me. Why don't you start writing some more of your own things? And, you know, that was great, and it was nice that he did. We weren't near as good as Shel, because, you know, you don't want to be on stage and sing like the Ballad of Lucy Jordan and then sing some crappy song of your own next. So I think that's another thing down at Shel, is that because as a young singer I got these great stories to tell, that when I write, it set a standard for me. It set some kind of standard, you know. And Shel is great at the story song and everything too, you know. But he said all kind of standards there for that. But yeah, I mean, we started writing, and Shel said, put some of your own things on there, which, you know, that's a pretty selfless thing to do.
Well, I mean, one of your songs that I've always loved in Doctor Who is If Not You.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about it, because that came to you very quickly.
Very quickly, yeah. I was living through that. The house in California, we were now going bankrupt and going broke. And my wife at the time and my little boy went back east to live with her mother. And I came back to California to the house with view of like trying to sell it or do something. And I went in, and she hadn't been there in a while, and the plants were hanging and dying. And I kind of thought almost in succession, well, who's going to water these plants? And then I was thinking literally that I had jeans that needed mending and stuff, you know. And I thought about that, who's going to patch these pants? And I really just sat down and I wrote it, but I wrote it so quickly that I didn't trust it, and I didn't show it to anybody for a long time, because I thought, oh, very simple, this won't be worth anything. And to this day, it's still, you know, it's really nice to know that something came out that quickly and people will sing that, you know.
Do you ever get accused of being a sexist pig for suggesting that?
Oh, at that point, yeah, there was a lot of the women's lib thing, and it was like, but see, that song was not about, hey, get over here and water my plants, hey, make me dinner. That was a more commentary on how helpless I was coming off the road. You know, yeah, great with the guitar, but, you know, practically idiot savant. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. It was more a comment on, you know, without you, I can't even do the simplest things. Not, I demand you fix my dinner. That wasn't what it was about. And I thought people would get that from the end, where it's like, who's going to want me in bed, but who'll watch TV? Because my wife used to do that at that point. I'd stay up late and watch television, and I'd say, go to bed. And she'd go, no, I just want to be here with you. And she'd sit there and be asleep in the chair, you know. So there's nothing in that song that wasn't an actual reality at that moment, you know. Sometimes you agonize over these things, and sometimes they come out quickly, and then you agonize over them.
Is that what you find as a songwriter, that your best stuff comes from your own experience? Or can it be, can it be complete fantasy? I
had a really lousy year last year, you know, domestically, personally, professionally. It was just a really weird year. I had a really couple of good years, and last year just kind of stalled out for me. And I'm just starting to write now and take some of those things, but sometimes it's a little too close to assimilate. You have to assimilate it a little bit, you know, before you can even write anything. And you know that old thing about, it's worth the pain, you get a good song out of it. You know, it's not true. You know the actor Rod Steiger, brilliant actor, and they were talking to him about, you know, where he gets his method from. And this guy wears his nervous system on his skin. I mean, he can just recall something in his life and just tears will flood. And they said, well, that must be good. I mean, that you have, he said, no, I would have traded all of this to have a happier You know, so he was saying, no, I would rather not go through the pain to get a good performance out of it. Of course I wouldn't have traded that. But since I did, seeing as how I have gone through that, I might as well use it for something. I don't think anybody, you know, tortures himself. That would be like blinding yourself so that you could play as good as Ray Charles. I mean, you know, it either is or it isn't, you know.
There was to completely change the subject.
That's good, because I was good anyway. You know, you never know with me. You know,
there was an incident.
Have I answered anything you've asked me? I know we've been
Probably
talking for a while.
I haven't been listening.
Okay. I was counting on that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
As soon as your eyelids went down, I thought, cool, I could just keep talking. Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going. Whenever you say anything loud, I kind of waken up.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why every once in a while I get louder, Johnny. Just do it.
There was an incident in Doctor Who's career, I think, where you got thrown off stage, didn't you?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, we used to, you know, we were out there 300 days a year, and we'd play a lot of these gigs in Copenhagen and stuff, and the audiences would come, and we used to think we had to give them something. So mostly for ourselves, one night we went out as our own opening act. We had done it a couple of times, but we went out as a bad glam rock band, and I played drums, went back to playing drums, and talking about what I did. I had a long beard, so I braided it, and I think I had green makeup on, and because I was always so chatty and smiley on stage, I did nothing but sneer, and Ray played bass, and we went out as a glam group, called ourselves Charlie Chillum and the Clumps, which I think was a hashish reference back then or something. And we went out there and...
Hashish, what's that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Believe me, it's a Danish word. I think it means,
Some kind
here
of
come the
pastry.
police.
Right.
Yes. But it's but we went out there as this band, and we played old rock and roll and blues until the audience was booing us off the stage and demanding Dr. Hook, because what we said was Dr. Hook is too drunk to come out right now, but while they're sobering up, here's another band. And we came out, and it was great. It was great fun. But we did it a couple of times. And what we did at the end of the night was, for our encore, we came back partially dressed again as that glam band and kind of let them in on the joke, because they never did know. They never did know. Ray didn't have the eye patch, he wore these big sunglasses and stuff. So no, but that was mostly, again, it was mostly for us, because I figured if we kept it, you know, if we
Keep you sane.
yeah, keep us interested, you know, because there was never anything to do on the road, you know. I mean, fortunately for us, none of us were real carousers. I mean, nobody was ever so drunk that they were missing gigs or stuff like that. So, you know, you get...
And yet that was kind of the image, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, these kind of scruffy
Yeah, but it's the
guys who
drunk
hung
on the
out in
high
bars
wire.
and got drunk. And
It's the drunk on the high wire, isn't it? I mean, if the guy was really that drunk, he'd be dead now. You know, and yeah, when we first went on the road, we were like every other band. I mean, you know, you think, hey, this is great. Let's party down, because you think it's going to last 3 weeks. But once you realize that this is, you know, a lifestyle, and then once they hand you an itinerary that takes your breath away, you know, it's like, okay, we're playing 5 nights in a row, and then we have a night off. I mean, I don't want to do cocaine on my night off, you know what I mean? Watch television or something, you know? You know what I'm saying? So we were never like that particularly. And we were very basic guys. Oh no, people would come to the studio and marvel at the fact that we were just hanging around. You know, they probably thought we were on, you know, IV drips and all sorts of stuff.
So you had this peculiar idea that perhaps you should play music now and again.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you should say that, because we were just talking a little while ago about the whistle test when Bob Harris, you know, they gave us the whole program. And we had like 39 minutes, and we came out and we just mucked about for about 11 minutes. We just did stupid things, dressed as the Bay City Rollers, and lip synced our current single on a fast speed. And then they brought out a sheet and backlit it, and we literally changed our clothes in back of the screen. Had the roadies dropped the sheet, it would have given a whole new meaning to national exposure, because we would have been really there. And I had a lot of people say, well, there's 40 minutes on the air and you screwed around for a third of it, you know, because there were serious musicians that thought, you know, we should have played. But I think that did a whole lot, because, you know, again, we're talking about Kiss, Alice Cooper, we're talking about stage productions and shows. When you saw something to remember, David Bowie, you know, I mean, it was, you know, Gary Newman, who made an entire career out of something David Bowie wore one weekend, you know. Those kind of, but it was all visual, and we were like a bunch of hippies, so we got your attention that way. But I thought that was a good idea to just screw around for, you know, because I see a lot of bands and they're impeccable, and then they leave and you don't know anything about them. Maybe Maybe you're not supposed to, but I kind of like it.
You definitely don't want to do what the TV people expect you to do. That's always the wrong thing, isn't it?
Right.
It's
Well,
gotta,
the good thing about the Whistle Test is I don't think they expected anything. You know, we had been on there a few times, once with Joan Armatrading and once with Otway and Barrett. And so, which shows you how diverse we were, right? It didn't matter who we were on there with.
I got the feeling that you, much as you enjoyed the early part of the Doctor Who career, towards the end, you kind of lost faith in what the band was doing.
Well, it's interesting because we were not very successful. We were intermittently successful at home in the States. Sylvia's mother cover Rolling Stone, everybody knew us. Then we start traveling internationally. We'd seem to fade away in America because you have to hammer at it. And so every time we were somewhere being popular, we were not popular. It was fading away, and I've used this analogy so much, but it's like the guy who spins the plates. By the time this side's going real good, this side's starting to wobble, and you got to go over and give Australia a little spin again. And we didn't, we were pre-video. So you didn't send a short film until everybody liked the way you looked. You had to be there. If they wanted to see you, you had to be there. And all those later records, When You're in Love with a Beautiful Woman, Sharing the Night Together, by the time we hit Sexy Eyes, which was a great radio record, and it broadened our audience at home, especially, we were purposely trying to get a bigger audience. Our shows were pretty much like they were. We cleaned up our image a little bit, but that wasn't so much that was just with the times. I mean, you just moved on. People changed. I mean, everybody's license or passport picture used to look like the Manson family, and then it didn't. You know what I mean? And everybody go, oh, really? Is that what you used to? So everything changed, But that was a conscious effort to try to have more success and get on TV. There was a radio station up in Detroit, in America, that was a big tracking station. And there's a woman who was the musical director. And if she went on a record, 300 other stations in America, secondary stations, would go on it. And that was the game. And I'd personally go out a lot with a tour manager and do a lot of radio. And she wouldn't play some of our records. And then I got a haircut and went in there and saw her, and Sharing the Night Together was the single. And I walked in and she went, now that's more like it, and went right on the record.
On the record.
Huge hit. And I thought, well, if that's ever, seriously. And I thought, well, that's not such a price to pay. And it wasn't like I'd even gotten the haircut to get the record on the thing. I just got a haircut because I was tired of having it in my mouth. And it was now 1978 instead of 1971, And, but those kind of things worked. But by the time we hit Sexy Eyes, the people who were making a lot of the musical decisions, and that was happening then, were making them in favor of songs like that. And I thought once we had everybody's attention, we should now go back to showing them who we were again. But it was that disco era, and everybody, so I don't know. You can hardly look back and say it was the wrong thing, because, I'm still here, you're still talking to me, so something was right.
But a decision had to be made, obviously, at some point. I've had enough of this.
Yeah, I was just disillusioned by it. I don't know, I made the decision in the back of my mind years before I did it. But, there was a band, I was the lead singer, people were counting on me, we all had families, there was a road crew that was always just as much a part of the band. I mean, they were always on retainer, because they were always with us. And you don't just make the decision, I want to leave, and walk away. So Ray, the fellow with the eye patch, he left because he was tired of being the guy with the eye patch. And it was true, because I started to sing a lot of the things. And we had such a weird career because everybody recognized his face, recognized my voice. And, we had our crosses to bear. Yeah, and we had our crosses to bear because, people would come to me and, we'd walk into the radio station and everybody would go right to Ray and talk to him. And then they'd go, only 16, great vocal. And he'd have to say, oh, that was Dennis. Paul Simon said a great thing one time. Somebody asked him if he resented when people asked how much of the song Art Garfunkel wrote.
Yeah.
And he said he used to get really stroppy and say, well, I write the whole song. Until he realized they were asking Art Garfunkel the same question, and he was having to say, well, I don't really write any of it. So everybody has their cross to bear,
Yeah.
Hey, when Ray left the band, I was fielding questions like, is it true that Dr. Hook was your daddy and now he's giving you permission to sing those songs? That was one I got asked. And the other comment I got all the time was, you look so much better without that eye patch. And you wonder what people were looking at, but that, you know, and so you got to say the guy had a strong image. The guy had definitely a strong image.
A bonus to the band, definitely.
But, you know, he was in a car accident and he lost his eye, and it was like I was saying about Rod Steiger, you think he would have, I think he probably would have wanted his eye back. So he made the best out of it. And that used to bother people too, because they used to be real frivolous about the fact, like it was an affectation. Because again, David Bowie wore an eye patch for one photo session, but he had an eye. And Ray didn't. Ray really suffered to have that image, you know, physically suffered to have that image. So it wasn't so lightweight to him, like, ah, ha, 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 like he could take it off, you know. So it was very, very serious. But one time I hurt my eye on the road, and the doctor said, yeah, you're going to have to wear an eye patch for a couple of weeks. And I said, you know, cut my head off. I'd rather be the headless guy from Dr. Hook than the other guy with an eye patch. You know, who's going to believe that? They don't even believe the one. You know, yeah, that's the headless guy. He sings out of a hole in his neck. He's great.
Maybe you could have given Ray your other good eye. And
yeah. Well, you know, he was always, that's another thing. He always had to stand on this side of the stage for me because he didn't want to be on my blind side, because we communicate a lot on stage. See how many things?
You have to think of all these things.
No, you don't know. Where do you place the fan? Where, you know... Where's the team of cosmeticians going to be?
So when you kind of...
You know, musical things.
When you'd made that decision to bite the bullet and say, right, it's the end of the band and the band ends.
Yes, I was not a popular guy.
Right.
It was not a popular decision.
Oh, you're saying to me that...
Well, after Ray left,
right.
After Ray left and went to do his own thing, we traveled around and did great business. I mean, we weren't really recording anymore. It had been a couple of years since the last hit, and we were kind of, you know, trading on that. And when Ray left, we did a tour called Dr. Hook featuring Dennis Locorriere, because I thought, let's have them concentrate on what's left, not what's gone. And then we did the Dr. Hook One and Only Farewell Tour. And I called it the One and Only Farewell Tour as opposed to the first annual farewell tour. You know, because a couple of years before that, Status Quo was doing their farewell tour, their first. And they were soliciting comments for their program, for their brochure. And I flippantly said, congratulations on your first annual farewell tour, which turned out to be true. And so I called it Dr. Hook's One and Only Farewell Tour, because I was pretty much sure that I wasn't going to be doing the, you know, I know what I said, but I still need the bread tour 2 years later, because I deliberated over it. But no, it wasn't a popular decision. You know, the other guys in the band wanted to know what they were going to do now, and I didn't really have a big game plan. It wasn't like, you know, I was all perched to move into that solo career at all. Because to tell you the truth, I reapproached some of the promoters that did great business with Hook. I approached them 6 months later as coming back as a solo, and then they all went, nah, no money in it. You know? And
was that what made you concentrate on songwriting, or was that was
songwriting
what
made me stay home, and I had to concentrate on something. No, but you know, I really thought, well, maybe I can now, you know, be the guy who sang those songs and, you know, just now spin off into something else. And no, the general consensus was, no, you'd have to call it Dr. Hook, no money in it. And you know, I don't want to call it Dr. Hook unless it is. I don't really want to call it Ketchup if it's not.
Sure.
You know, and I think people are right when they say Dr. Hook was the sum of its parts. You know, I've been accused of you know, you see certain things on websites about, well, Dennis thinks he was the whole band. And no, I don't think I was the whole band. But I can tell you that I could just tell you what it was I did and feel comfortable. I don't feel like I have to make up more than I did. I don't feel like I have to extrapolate, or, you know what I mean? I think I could tell you honestly what my contribution was, and you'd see that it was a big one. I don't think I have to lie about it, or not lie, but just, you know, I see lots of times like how things are a little misrepresented, and as long as you don't correct it, it's okay. And I'm not really here to correct anything either. Anything anybody needs to get by, you know. But I'm not real big on trading on the past. And trust me, I know why I'm here, and there'll always be Hook songs in the set. But it's one of the reasons I don't tour in America is because they want me to do these super 70s tours. And I'm just not going to do it. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, I just don't really want to go out and try to recapture the past. That doesn't mean that I don't want some of my past in the show, because it's nice to have a history. but then we got just the caboose. We don't have the engine. Back up the history to the rest of the train, and then you'll see I've been doing stuff for 30 years, and look, he's still doing it. But I'm not really interested in just going out and doing the Please Remember Me tour. I'm really not. I mean, it's what kept me out of it for a long, long time, you know.
Avoiding that.
And when I came back to do the Love Songs tour in '99, based on that Hook album, I did a lot of the old things, but I did a couple of new songs. And when I got home, most of the fan letters and email reflected, ooh, new songs. Does that mean there's more? And that was what opened my eyes. Not, love to hear that, glad you could still walk, we'd come see if you were on a Zimmer frame, don't worry about it, you can go deaf, you know. I mean, and that's all lovely and flattering, but it was that they went, ooh, still vital, still current. I mean, and who doesn't want to be? You don't have to be in the music business. What if you're a woman who raised your children and you were a great mom, and then the children grow up and now you're nothing because you're not mom anymore? Everybody wants to know that they're valuable right now. You don't want to just go, well, I was a great mom and now I have no life. I mean, you want to know that you could do something now. Otherwise, I'm wasting everybody's time. You know, you get the calls about re-recording the Hook stuff. I got a guy who called me. You don't?
No.
Really? I'm surprised. I really am, you know, because when I turned it down, I figured they'd go straight to you.
But I gather you're one of the few songwriters alive who's actually had one of his songs performed by Bob Dylan.
Yeah, that, you know, again, I think this is due to Shel, because I hear that Bob Dylan was a big Shel, or is a big Shel fan. But in that movie that Dylan did, Hearts of Fire, it's about an aging rocker falling in love with this young girl, and he apparently, I've never seen it, he apparently sings her a little bit of Couple More Years, the song that I wrote with Shel. And you know, the funny thing about that song too is that Shel wrote those lyrics and inadvertently had borrowed a melody of mine, of something that I was writing. And when I was singing the song, I thought, why do I know this so well? And we'd figured out that he had borrowed my melody, so he actually gave me half of the writers. He didn't have to. You know, he really didn't have to, because it's really just a country melody. And to tell you the truth, if they ever start suing each other for those country melodies, you know, there's going to be the same $100,000 changing hands forever, because there's only about 5 of them, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, you know, so every once in a while I'll get a little royalty check, and you know, it's 10 pennies, but it has, I can actually say Bob Dylan sang a song.
You that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you say whatever you can, right? Yeah, he's written songs for Bob. Yeah, right. I wrote Blowing in the Wind.
And you've had other performers perform your songs as well, though, didn't you? In that period of
yeah, not that many.
Yeah.
Not that many. You know, Olivia Newton-John cut something that we wrote, and you know, Lou Rawls cut something. Not that many. Nobody really had any big success with it, but it's always cool to hear somebody sing your song back. You know.
And you strayed into acting as well for a while.
Yeah, again, boy, I mean, you ought to be talking to Shel.
This is the Shel Silverstein story.
Shel, well, hey, it just shows you how much faith he's had in me, which was great, because he called me and he said, you know, I came off the road in '85, and I really was kind of rudderless for a while, didn't know what I wanted to do, had a list this long of things I didn't want to do anymore, certainly for a while, but not anything I really wanted to do. And my son called me, he was 15 at the time, and he said, what if I come to Nashville and live with you? He was living with his mother in New York. And it was a direct challenge, and I thought, okay, it was kind of scary, but he came and lived with me, and after a few years, he went away to university up to New York, and I all of a sudden was like a little bit at odds, not knowing what to do. And Shel called me and said, look, we're doing these plays at Lincoln Center in New York, and Lincoln Center in New York, I mean, you know, you could be an actor 25 years and never arrive on a stage like that. And he said, David Mamet and we're each doing a play. It's going to be presented as a production called Oh Hell, and both plays are about the devil. David Mamet has 4 actors. If you'll do it, you can be, mine is just a one-man piece. Will you do it? And I said, Shel, I'm not an actor. And he said, come on, don't make me. First of all, he didn't want to have to deal with an actor, he said. He didn't want to explain himself to an actor. And he pretty much thought I knew the way his mind worked because of the songs. And like I said, again, Sylvia's Mother, Carry Me, Carry, Ballad of Lucy Jordan, I always thought of these as like little films. I always thought of this as telling a story. So I said, well, how long will I be on stage? And he said, oh, it's about 10, 15 minutes. And he said to me, and it was almost 60 pages of single line type poem. It was a poem, a 60-page poem that I had to memorize called The Devil and Billy Markham. And I said, okay. And then, you know, I woke up every night like, oh, God, what have I said in Lincoln Center? What am I, insane? You know? And I went and did it, and it was just probably the best experience for me because it was, again, I'm an only child, and so it was the Dennis Locorriere show, just like 10 years old. It was just down to me. And in it, I got to play all these different characters and the devil, and it was funny, and it was well written, and it was great to go on stage armed with material like that, But I had never done that before in my life. Just gone out and acted. And it was simply because Shel didn't want to have to deal with an actor. But I somehow knew that he wasn't going to give me his play and let me ruin it. You know what I'm saying? So again, I went on his confidence in me. He saw something in me that I didn't see, obviously. And so I just did it. And I'd actually like to do some more of that. I'd like to do that play again somewhere. Because my only prop was a mop, a bucket, and a harmonica. Oh, and a guitar that I used at the end. And he allowed me, because it was a poem, he allowed me to make up melodies in 4 or 5 places, because it was all in cadence and rhyme anyway. So he allowed me to turn it into almost like a little musical thing. And then on opening night, after about 3 or 4 weeks of previews, opening night, people like Christopher Reeve and Paul Simon and Mike Nichols and all these people were there. And they were all coming up to me going, "That was brilliant." And about every 5 people, I'd have to go outside and go, because I'm looking at all these people that I see on TV, and they're all telling me how good I was. And I really had to leave the room every couple of minutes and just do sort of a reality check, on that. But it was a good experience.
A fantastic experience of itself. And did it carry over into when you came back to performing?
Yes. And strangely enough, Shel wanted me to do some more of his plays and get a little more into acting. And I got calls from studios and from all 3 of the major networks in America. And I went on auditions to do all these little TV things. But I have to tell you that there was nothing I was really interested in doing. I didn't really want to make believe I was a police commissioner. Or the thing about Shel was...
This was for TV series
and
things like that?
Yeah, I went on auditions for all sorts of things, policemen and hippies and bikers and lawyers. And I went on auditions for all sorts of things. And I'd go into these auditions thinking, well, I don't really want to do this. See, because the cool thing about Shel's play was I only had to walk out there as me and then tell you a story, and in that story play characters. But I didn't have to walk in the room and convince you I was an Indian chief and then tell you the story. So, interpreting, maybe storytelling even more a little closer than acting. Because my heart's not really into making believe I'm a cowboy or... You know what I mean? That's not really what I want to do. I could tell you a joke and change my voice 3 times, but I don't think when you leave you're actually going to think I'm an Irish priest. So, but so it was fun to do, and it gave me more confidence about being on stage, and I actually got good reviews, which I didn't read any of, because the director said in the theater we don't read reviews, and it's such a great thing not to do. It really is, because if somebody says to you, "Oh, you didn't get such a review in such a publication. It's such a great review." You think, okay, great. But if you read it and it says, "I think he was limping," then that night I'm limping, or I'm measuring my leg before I go on. You don't want to be too specific about anything, So, but when I saw these reviews, it made me think, well, maybe I should go back to that thing I'm supposed to be good at. And also just being on stage. Because the director was great too. He'd done a lot of productions, and he said to me, "You have great timing, just use your own judgment." We used to have a producer and a manager that used to say, "You could never go wrong if you use your own timing. Come on, use it now. So this was come on. You're really funny when you're natural now. And so this director would give me a hug and go, "Great, just do what you're doing." And he'd give you little instructions like, "Well, if you do this, what do you think that?" And I'd say, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, "Well, then do that." But pulling it out of you rather, because I was such a novice, I actually asked the question, "Well, when you're talking, how do you know what to do with your hands?" And he said, "It doesn't matter. If you're shouting at somebody, you could be scratching your head, you could be, it doesn't matter what you're doing with your hands. There are no correlated movements to, well, you son of, there are none, you know what I mean? So, and he just said to me, use your timing, be who you are, and it'll be great. And it worked. Yeah, it was really nice. And it made me want to get back on stage, because I don't think it's so different singing songs, only it's like telling, instead of one story, it's like telling 20. I don't really think that's that different.
There has to be an acting element to getting up and singing songs. doesn't
Well,
there?
you know,
Yeah.
some nights you really want to be there, and some nights you act like you really want to be there, and you get caught up in it. And I mean, nobody feels the same. That's another great thing that the director told me. He said to me, if you're ambivalent about going out there, don't try to change how you feel. If you're angry, if you're down, if you're... just go out there with it and use it. Because there's got to be some ambivalence about walking out onto a stage anyway. No matter how many times you've done it. You got to walk out there a little bit like, okay, what's this going to be now? At least I do. You know, how many times you fight a bull, you still go out there thinking, oh, I wonder where that horn's going. You know, you don't just take for granted because you got the moves. It's a different bull. It's a different audience. That's a, you know, it's not a oil painting. You don't just go on, or at least I don't. I talk to the people and they talk back to me, and I look for the things that make each night different.
Before we leave Doctor Who completely, you mentioned Lucy Jordan.
Yeah.
And that's a great song. But there's a story, isn't there, about how that got from Doctor Who to Marianne Faithfull?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's her one of, you know, she was on Graham Norton the other night and they played Lucy Jordan as she came down the stairs. That's her signature song. Shel wrote that. I really don't remember if he wrote that while we were recording or if he had it. But I know at the time I heard it, he had never sung it to us before. And when I sang that song, it wasn't really a big hit. But when I met Marianne Faithfull at Top of the Pops, and I said to her, how did you hear this song? And she said, I bought your record, silly. And I thought, oh yeah, it was available for purchase, wasn't it? And then she told me that Mick and her had come to the Rainbow to see us. So I never knew people like Marianne Faithfull and Mick Jagger and stuff was coming to, you know, to the shows and stuff like that. No, but see, when I sang Ballad of Lucy Jordan, it was about the woman on the roof. When Marianne Faithfull sings the Ballad of Lucy Jordan, she is the woman on the roof. I mean, that's why, you know, and so I can see that. I can see why it's closely, you know, identified with her.
So what is next then, Dennis? What's
Last year was a little bit of a setback because we had an album that was scheduled to come out, and I kind of, you know, I was asked not to tour till the album came out, so I kind of took a year off and readied myself to put the album out, and the company just kind of, I don't know if they went broke or they just kind of reneged on the whole thing.
Was this the Track Records?
No,
thing?
Track
that
was
that was
fine.
prior, wasn't it? That was earlier.
Track was fine. It was another thing. I won't even mention them because, you know, but they, it just kind of pulled the rug out from under me. And it impacted on every aspect of my life because I finished the album. And thank goodness I still have the album. So, you know, but it really was a year of just... But, you know, I said to one of my friends, I said, you know, I'm sort of crawling on my belly here, but even while you're crawling on your belly, you still want to, like, say hello to some of the right people. Hey, nice shoes, you know, as you're going by. And so I'm trying to write songs. I didn't want it to be a lost year. So, you know, I had some time to put some personal stuff together. But, you know, I'm not going anywhere. So it's not really like, you know, I'm in a hurry to do anything.
So it's not it's not a lost album. That's
thank
gonna
goodness.
resurface.
And you know, this live album that this will be a part of is cool because it was just simply, I came and did a show acoustically and we recorded it, and somebody likes it enough to put it out, and it's great because it'll represent my show. And so I don't really know. It's not like I'm trying to, you know, do that one thing. Do that one thing and then I can get the hell out of this business. You know, I was already out of it for a long time, and apparently I do this for the same reason. You know, like a dog runs fast, greyhound dog. They just run, they chase a rabbit at 90 miles an hour. You know what I mean? So this is just kind of what I do, and if it makes sense to people, I guess I just need to find the people it makes sense to. You know, I can't make everybody love me because if they did, they'd just kiss me to death.
Dennis Locorriere.
Yeah, there you go.